Hello. Long time no chat, guys. Well, nice to see you. So, yeah, it's busy. I apologize for not doing more of these broadcasts, but life gets in the way and you just got to go with it. So, we're just going to jump in. Um, as I stated in previous posts, all of my talks kind of have a tendency to bleed one into the other in terms of themes, in terms of subject matter, how they kind of all feed and build upon the next. The last one was the idea of your government and the purpose of government and how it actually kind of runs counter to the previous issues of love, of family, of respect, of how the courts function run antithetical to, even in desire though, to help moderate a positive society. It actually can destroy a society because of the machinations within the legal system not functioning in reality the way the best of intentions are in the writing. It's the where the rubber meets the road kind of a thing. So go back in and watch that. So tonight I want to talk about the issue of honor and integrity. What is honor and integrity? What is your honor? And do you have honor and integrity? Honor and integrity is basically, it's a code of ethics that you live by that allows you to stay on a straight and narrow, to commit to a way of living that allows you to have a clear conscience, a sense of pride, a sense of, I don't want to use the words integrity and whatnot because I don't like using the words as part of the definition, but it allows you to have a sense of value, sense of trustworthiness. If you have honor and you don't compromise that honor or your integrity, uh, let me do this real quick here, just to, so the legal definition, if you want to call it that, it says basically here adherence to what is right or a conventional standard of conduct, uh, to fulfill or keep your agreements, your uh, commitments. Uh, now, if you're constantly breaking your commitments, your agreements, or you're trying to find loopholes to exploit a way out of adherence to that, then you're lacking honor and integrity. That's why when you sign contracts, a lot of times what's written down is what's enforceable. But if people aren't honoring those contracts, then you hear the old saying, it's not worth the paper it's printed on, which means the contract really holds no value if all the parties are not honoring the terms. So now, then, what is the definition of integrity? Integrity, the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, moral uprightness. Now, a lot of times when we hear about truth or we hear about what's right and what's wrong, you always hear this thing of it's my truth, it's your truth, it's the ultimate truth. Everybody has their own angle. If it's my truth, then it's perspective. If it's your truth, then it's perspective because it's seen through your eyes and there's a potential for what they call bias. If it's seen through your angle, that's another thing it's called bias. It's influenced by your perception. So it's validated by your sense of understanding. So the third angle on this is what they call universal truth. Universal truth exists regardless of the perspective of the person uh, making the assessment. So a universal truth, a universal sense of honor is something that either party cannot manipulate or warp or maneuver to their own side and their own perspective. That's called the ultimate truth. And either party can align themselves to the ultimate truth, but it oftentimes will mean require a denial of your own personal biases to align yourself with an ultimate truth. And in society in this day and age, I don't know if you look from our political structure to what's happening in the world to even our families, we're seeing that honor and integrity is really not being practiced or promoted from top down. We're not seeing it in local government. We're not seeing it in the federal government. We're not even seeing it in world government. What we're seeing is territorialism, tribalism. We're seeing basically instead of self-sacrificial actions, we're seeing other sacrificial actions. So standing up for a code of what is right or wrong, we see this in our leaders all day long. How many leaders who run for office or run for any sort of political uh, office or sort of position of authority in their campaigning to get into the position, they will often call out all the negatives of the people that are either running in opposition against them or people that hold the position they want. So they'll call all of their things out about the worst traits that they do. Only to once they get in that office, if they get elected or appointed to that very position, they themselves do exactly what they told the public was wrong that the other person was doing. And then they justify their own actions, saying, well, I have the right, or they start, you know, justifying the negative things that they just said some wrong somebody else is doing. That shows a real lack of honor, a real lack of integrity. Or you see people, and we see this a lot in government, a lot of people, there is a thing of fraud. There's a thing of being bribed. There are people, lobbyists in politics and in our world are specifically there to influence politicians to garner favor with them. So they will bribe them without bribing them through political donations, through gifts, all this stuff to entice that politician to veer from maybe their potential point of view to championing the truth of whoever this lobbyist is. So if you look at our society right now, we're not too happy with our political leaders top down. And we see everybody on both sides of the aisle. There shouldn't even be two sides of the aisle, truthfully, because that inherently pits people against each other. Instead of us seeing things from a biased point of view, we all need to kind of look at things from a more global standpoint, and we're not. And so the question about honor and integrity. So I was looking at some movies that mean a lot to me about honor and integrity. One of them is Braveheart. And Braveheart really, even though it's dramatized about the story of William Wallace and it was written by William Randall Wallace, who did also We Were Soldiers, directed by Mel Gibson and starring Mel Gibson as William Wallace, a Scotsman Highlander who was fighting against the English uh, to make keep Scotland free. All he cared about was a free Scotland and people living with a sense of honor and integrity and pride for who they were, proud Scotsmen. And during the course of the film, he's dealing with other clans within the Scottish realm who are trying to find ways to bargain with the English, who are vastly outnumber them, vastly out resource them, and their attitude is, well, once we claim Scotland for ourselves, then who's going to be the king of Scotland, or who's going to be the top clan? Uh, and William Wallace just is disgusted. He's like, you guys are doing it again. You guys are still fragmented. When are we going to be a unified people of honor and integrity? And they're dealing with Robert the Bruce. Robert the Bruce was going to be the potential king of Scotland and whatnot. And his father in the movie was of the old school, saying, forget about these people. You've got a title, and he lacked real honor and integrity because he was all about just getting the power by any means necessary. So break your alliances, don't honor your word, protect your legacy, and your legacy is power. And there's a scene in there where he finds Robert the Bruce finds William Wallace to be a good man who stands for what he believes in, and he's willing to go to the death for it. And in the process, in one of the battles, everything seems to be going in the right direction. And all of a sudden, a whole faction of Scotsmen leave the battle, leaving William Wallace and his men at a loss in terms of manpower. And they're getting overwhelmed. And as he's running away, another soldier who's shrouded in armor and you can't see his face interacts with him. They fall on the ground. He pulls off the helmet, and it turns out that it's Robert the Bruce, the man who was closest to him, who had the chance, who basically sold him out. And you just see this look of defeat on William Wallace's face. Here's a man who didn't honor his word, who basically undercut William Wallace and his own Scots people for his own benefit. He didn't honor his commitments, didn't honor his contracts, didn't verbal or otherwise, and saw the opportunity. And when he came eye to eye with William Wallace, you could just see he knew what he had done was wrong. He knew that he had messed up, but it was too late. And later on, William Wallace is captured by the English, and he's basically given the option. You're going to die either way. But either you die by recanting what you believe, and it'll be a fast death, or don't recant, and it's going to be a slow, laborious, agonizing death. Either way, you're going to die. And the ending scene is so brutal. But you see a man who, as he's being drawn and quartered, basically, or he's being drawn, his internal organs are being slowly removed from his belly. They don't show it on camera, but you know what's happening. And everyone's saying, recant, recant. He can't do it. He can't give up. is right. And as he he's basically being asked by the executioner, "Do you want to say something?" And he's, for lack of a better term, he goes, "I want to say one thing. You have one word." He leans in, and the last thing you hear is him say, "Freedom." He screams it out and pretty much dies right then and there. He went to his grave standing up for what he believed in. It's That's what honor and integrity is. It's not buckling when you know you're right, even when you're up against incredible forces that have a lot of power to take from you, to bully you into submission. When you understand that structure, when you understand what you're up against. Another great movie, Henry V, which is one of my all-time favorite Shakespeare plays and movies in the 1989 Kenneth Branagh film. There is a scene in there as they're getting ready to go to battle, as they're standing in their conference room with all the other soldiers, and this is at this point, it was the English going against the French. They always fought, all these kingdoms always fought back in the historical era like that. At a certain point, King Henry finds out that his three best friends that he'd grown up since childhood sold him out for treason to the French. He knows this. The three guys that are his three best friends don't know that they've been found out. And as they're passing out all the orders, the standing orders for the day and whatnot, there's one situation where a guy got drunk or whatever, and he made a poor choice. And King Henry says, "You know what? We're going to forgive this guy. We figure it was probably alcohol, and we're going to forgive him for his crime." And the three guys chime in and say, "No, you have to show the full strength of you have to show the full strength of your kingship. You don't want people to think you're soft, so you have to show him the full extent of the law." And King Henry looks at the three guys and says, "There'll be time enough for that, but I think for this guy, we'll give him a hall pass. But I thank you for your concern," while he knows exactly their crimes. And later on in the scene, he opens up, he gives everybody their standing war orders. Those three guys open up their war orders, and it turns out that it's warrants for their arrest for treason. They realize they've been found out. And I remember this monologue. I'm going to skewer it a little bit, but he basically says, "What see you in those papers that make your eyes so ashen? You have stole from our kingdom. You have stole from the princes and peers, brought our people into oppression and contempt, and our whole kingdom into desolation. Touching our person, we seek no revenge, but we our kingdom's safety must so tender, whose ruin that you have sought, that to your death we deliver you. Therefore get thee hence, you poor miserable wretches, to your death, the taste wherein God give you patience to endure, and true repentance for all your dear offenses. Bear them hence." What he basically is saying is, look, as a king, as a friend, I forgive you. I forgive you as a friend. But as a king, I have to keep the rules. So even though you're forgiven as a friend, and I love you and I'll always love you got to go to your death, because that's treason. You sold us all out. So you got to go. And they were sent off to their deaths. Another movie, Rob Roy with Liam Neeson, 300. There's all these different movies out there that deal with the idea of honor and integrity, standing up for what you believe in the face of immense odds. I went through something recently where I won't go too deep. I did all my research. I knew the environment. I knew what I was walking into. I knew I was going to lose before I walked in. Why? Because I had researched this environment that I was going into. I knew how it functioned. I knew what the I knew what the game plan or the field of play was. And I knew that technically there was no way I was going to come out on the winning end of this thing. Because at the end of the day, there was no winner. Because when you had to look at the thing from a global standpoint, no one was going to win in this because the mere fact that we were in that arena shows that it's a feudal situation anyway. So the mere fact that we were in there, you can't say that there's a winner because when you look globally, no one wins in that environment. So when the situation didn't go the way I knew it was it didn't go the way I wanted, but the way I knew it was going to go. And the more I sat there and the more I listened to the other parties involved and how it was going down, and certain things were said to me that if I had changed or melded to their way, I might get more of the benefit from them I desire that they control. But in order for me to get that benefit, it would mean me having to deny everything I knew that was right. Everything that I knew was the proper thing to do. And what was being dangled from in front of me was no assurances because on the other side, they had the ability to make up the rules as they went with no sort of checks and balances except their own bias to determine whether I met the metric or not. That's a lose-lose situation. You're not going to win in that situation because it's a corrupt environment. It's a corrupt situation. We see this all the time. We see this all the time in business models, business situations where you walk into a business negotiation and you know the cards are stacked against you because you find out members of the board all have side deals going on. We see it in so many different areas of society, the courts especially. And I've talked about that, kind of at length in the last video about how the courts operate. So, you lose out, but what do you gain if you compromise? If I compromise on this, then years from now, when I have another situation that may pop up in my life, because we all will, you go in and out of rough times and good times come and good times go. There will be other times when I'm asked to compromise my values. And when you understand that the people who are asking you to compromise or demanding you compromise really are not in they don't have your best interest in mind. They don't even have anybody's best interest in mind but their own. You have to look at the bigger picture on that. And so you have to stand up for what you believe in. So honor and integrity, it's what you have when everything else is gone. I do talk about my faith. I've been a Christian for 30 years. I don't like to force my beliefs on other people. This is just how I live my life. If people find value in what I bring to the table about what I share and they want to adopt it for their lives, awesome. If not, That's fine too. I love hearing people about other backgrounds, and I like hearing the differences of people because it helps me learn more about my own life. And if you want to debate or have discussions about those issues, that's fine too, as long as they're done in respectful, mutually respectful situations. But then you look at we live in a society. I heard a saying one time. A man who's and I don't know where this comes from. A man who stands for nothing nothing will fall for anything. If you don't have your code you live by, that unshakable faith, that unshakable uh, belief system, the moment something that threatens you comes in the path, you're going to throw it away and you're going to go with the tide. And a lot of times, and you'll do it in fear, and a lot of times it won't be to your best interest. If you think about this, I hate bringing up this subject matter, but there is a lot to learn from that moment in history. If you look at the issue of World War II fascist Germany, when the Nazis started to round up people in these ghettos and the Jewish people, and we're seeing the persecution of the Jewish people happening again. And there's all this spin happening, and I'm not going to get into the current situation, but I'm going to look at a historical aspect. Amongst that era, in fact, the TV show, if you remember the TV show when we were kids, V, The Final Battle, originally Kenneth Johnson wrote that show, if I remember correctly. He wanted to do a, m- a mini-series TV show about World War II. It was too controversial at the time. So the networks said, "No, we're not gonna we're gonna pass on doing a show about Nazi Germany and the occupation that took place there." So what did he do? He made a TV show about aliens invading Earth, lizard people in disguise, who come to Earth as our friends, take over, and infiltrate society and slowly start to control the people. He basically took the Nazi World War II milieu and used aliens as the motif to tell the same story. Instead of Nazi soldiers, you had lizard aliens from another planet. You had resistance fighters. Well, one of the things that they used to do is they would go in and occupy an area, a Jewish area that was predominantly, and they would take people from that community, entice them with special privileges, benefits, a sense of authority, a sense of figure, a sense of importance, and by the Nazis. So they would go into the community, find certain Jewish people that could be easily impressioned or leaned upon to basically be, for lack of a better term, um, could be moles. They would live amongst them, then they would report back to the Nazis. They would be rats or report back to the Nazis anything they saw that their fellow people were doing that was quote unquote illegal, and then the Nazis would come in and deal with those people, take them away, whatever. And in the TV show V, there was a character like that. He was a human who was felt disrespected by his parents and kind of the the people, and the aliens took him under their wing, gave him a uniform, gave him a sense of authority, gave him a sense of power, and then he started ratting out his own family, sending them to their deaths. There's a guy who lacked honor and integrity to the point where he sold out his own family. That's happening a lot in this world. A lot of people that are just protecting their own, but not really realizing at the end of the day, they're actually hurting themselves for short term gain. We're seeing it in business. We're seeing people that are willing to sell products that they know don't really contribute positively to society, but can turn a quick buck really fast. And they justify it. Well, hey, this is we're businessmen. This is what we do. I talked about the movie Jerry Maguire a few weeks back about his whole mission statement. And what got him fired was he had this epiphany about doing business better, about standing up for something that's right, doing things not just for the dollar amount, and not just to, increase your bottom line. And it got him fired. But now that's a fictitious movie, but he hung in there and he was rewarded. Now in life, that does happen. A lot of times it doesn't though. A lot of times, it's not a Hollywood ending. It's a reality ending, like William Wallace. He stood up for what he believed in, but he lost his life. Wasn't like Jerry Maguire, who rode off into the sunset. It was hard, but he ultimately rode off into the sunset. And there's no way to tell which way it's going to go because there is no, in a world full of variables, in a world full of uh, random, free will, you can't determine, you you can't risk and know the outcome because there's too many variables to determine that outcome. In my situation, I knew full well, but here's the thing. I stood up for what I believe in. Even though it's not being honored now, I have faith that at some point in the future, I'll be vindicated. Not by the parties involved immediately. Why? Because it's never in their vested interest to vindicate me, because if they do, then it negates their whole purpose. And pride is a hard thing. Pride often does not let us admit our own faults. We hide it by other people. I'm not looking for their vindication. I'm looking for other signs down the road that may or may not come. It happened to me when I was younger that the light bulb came on for me and I could see the vindication and I could validate what happened. Um so when it comes to your honor and integrity, at the end of the day, all you've got. Money comes and goes. Your health comes and goes. Your jobs come and go. Family members come and go in your life. All you have at the end of the day is your own honor and integrity. And people say, well, what did it buy you? You ended up homeless. You ended up without family. I said, you know what I have? My pride, my sense of value, my sense of self worth. When everybody else buckled on a cosmic plane or whatever you want to call it, I didn't. In a and some people are like, "Well, that doesn't matter." Well, and you know what? To them it doesn't, but to me, when you honor, your contracts. When you don't pledge or go into agreement with your fingers crossed behind your back, or you have no desire to follow your contracts, then why enter into it unless you're attempting to deceive? That's not the lessons I want in my life, not the lessons I desire for my children's, to learn and grow for, to adapt into their life. Because at some point they're going to reach out and make up the decisions, and if they don't honor their contracts, they're in for a hard road because there's a thing called consequences. And some people, some people go through life wanting the authority of control, but none of the negatives of responsibility that come with it. And so, that being said, if you understand that now, if you understand that at the end of the day, all you have is your honor and integrity. Trends come and go, people come and go, but that remains. I don't know if I'm explaining myself enough, and maybe I'm belaboring a point tonight, but this is kind of just where I'm at in terms of it pains me when I can't honor my commitments. And if I do, and if I'm not able to honor a commitment, I always try to rectify it after the fact, or I let people know in advance, hey, here's something that's going to happen. It's going to cause me difficulty in honoring this commitment right now. But I hope I built a track record that you can see that I can make up for it. And I desire to make good on that. Would you work with me? And if I built up a track record of honesty and integrity, they'll see, hey, yeah, all right, that's fine. You're good for it. We know you are. You've done well. And so it buys me time. There are times when you're not going to be able to fulfill your commitments. And if you've built up a reputation of honor and integrity and you've built a good rapport with certain your relationships, they will see that this is not a pattern of your life, but this is, a snafu here and there. And yeah, you get through it. So I guess that's kind of what I wanted to talk about tonight was the idea I'm a little short tonight, about 40 minutes, but I just wanted to really touch base on the issue of honor and integrity to bring it to a close, that it's the only thing you have, your word, who you are. You don't compromise it for anyone, no matter the authority figure, if you know you're right. Because even authority figures in a position, just because a person's in a position of authority, they may call it a position, does not mean they're right. Does not mean that it means they have control, right? That's true, but it doesn't mean that they're right. So you have to stand by what you believe in. But you also have to be willing to take your lumps. Because if you stand up for what you believe in against an authority figure who's wrong but has power, you're going to have a hard road. And it's not going to be easy. But you got to see past that. Again, watch the movies Braveheart. Watch the movie Rob Roy. Watch the movie 300. Watch Henry V. There's so many movies out there which talk about, you know, uh, honor and integrity, sticking up for something, following through. Rocky Balboa, great monologue, talking about following through, honor and integrity, sticking with something. Rocky's talking to his son, and I'm paraphrasing here, and he basically his son's having some struggles, and he goes, "Look, nothing is going to hit you as hard as life." He goes, "But life, it's not about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done." Your honor and integrity is what allows you to get up when you've been beaten down again and again and again. If you don't have your honor and integrity, you will fall to the wayside. You will let life beat you down. But if you don't hold on to that core, you'll be left to the wayside. God gave you that ability, whether you believe in God or not. I personally do, but hey, so I kind of invoke that here and there. God gave you this thing called honor and integrity. I use Jesus Christ. He went to the cross. People say, well, he died. But the point was, according to Christian scripture, if you believe that, he rose from the dead. He resurrected. So basically, he was able to get past that stumbling block and see the bigger picture, and he overcame that. He rose again, as an example. So the idea is honor and integrity. He never buckled. When in front of Pilate, he didn't buckle because he knew the fix was in, but he knew that there was a bigger picture here. So that's what I want to share with you tonight, guys. It's a little bit short tonight, but it's the issue of honor and integrity. Keep your honor and integrity. And if you don't have it, find it. Look in your past life. Look at where you let people down. If you let people down consistently and you can't admit fault, that's another thing. Part of honor and integrity is admitting when you're wrong and trying to make amends. There are some people who physically I was in a business situation a few months ago with this young kid who was a real eye on a he had his eye on the prize mentality. Young kid, been out of school not too long, go getter, about being a leader, about being this, and I'm 30 years into my career. Just hit the big 50 recently, so I've got a whole different outlook on business, quite different than this young kid. And I was like him back in the day. He's a kid who thinks about leadership is about placing him at the top of the authority. Having all this knowledge, people listening to him, people putting him up on a pedestal and doing what he says and blah, 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 blah. And what you noticed was he would spout certain things about, nobody's above reproach. But then when you would approach him, he'd get all mad that you're questioning his authority. So you could see the youthfulness of the go get him mentality. But he didn't have the aged wisdom and the honor and integrity to admit when he was wrong. We had a huge argument at one point. And I don't mind working for somebody younger than me. Don't, not at all. If that's the position you're in and you've got that position, my job is to make you look good. As long as I get the validation back for what I'm doing for you, validate that I'm doing a good job and whatnot. This guy could never admit that he was wrong. I got him into a position. It was a real touch and go situation. I said, admit it, you were wrong. You couldn't and you can't. And he was for a good 30 to 40 seconds, you could see him just he was so tongue-tied. He could never admit that he was wrong in the entire conversation. When it was all the evidence was there that the choices that were made were directly the wrong choices were directly tied to orders this person gave. And due to his poor leadership ability, and when he was brought up about it, he couldn't admit it because he was afraid. He was afraid what? Of one, getting fired, two, being found out that he wasn't a good leader, and his ego was taking over. And I'm like, dude, some of the best leaders out there are the ones that are the first ones to admit that they've messed up. Somebody's honest and transparent like that. That's somebody worth following because at least they'll tell you, hey, this is what I can do, but I'm not perfect, and we'll figure it out. I like that kind of guy. That shows honor and integrity. Not that you're trying to snow job anybody. So start to look at your honor and integrity. Look at your life and look at the people that you've maybe not shown too much integrity with. Go back, apologize, repair those relationships. Apologizing isn't often good enough. You have to make good on the apology by showing a change of attitude, showing a change of lifestyle, showing a change of action. That is part of honor and integrity. Honoring your commitments, admitting fault when you have done something wrong, and righting the wrong by not doing it again and taking honest efforts. Listen, thank you for this time. Please consider subscribing and sharing my channel. I will be posting these as I can, and just words of encouragement. Hope that you're all well, and thank you for being along for the ride. Have a good night.